Really bad news for Carlo Ancelotti from an administrative standpoint. He will be the next coach of the Brazilian national team. That's already given. But the person that hired him is in deep trouble because Ednaldo Rodrigues, as of a few minutes ago, is no longer the president of the CBF. The a tribunal in Rio said basically that there were administrative irregularities when it came to the election of Ednaldo. That there needs to be a series of people that need to sign off on candidates. According to what's been presented as evidence and the decision from the courts, Ednaldo Rodrigues did not have a legitimate signature. A gentleman named Coronel Nunes, who was a very prominent, or has been a very prominent individual in terms of football and football justice and football administration in Brazil, well, it was seen that he signed off on Ednaldo Rodrigues, and now, based on the evidence, based on everything that's presented, and based on the final decision from the courts say that that signature that was on that document was not his. In other words, that signature was forged. So based on that and other conditions, other situations that have been going on, Ednaldo Rodrigues is no longer the president of the CBF. What ends up in, obviously, a lot of it I have to read is, a lot of it is just coming out. You start seeing the presence of Ednaldo Rodrigues, and there's a lot of problems here. Fernando Sarney, who's one of the vice presidents of the CBF, he's actually the opposition of Ednaldo Rodrigues now. He was calling it out, and now this is what's happening. He will be in charge, I guess you could say, on an interim basis. The authorities, and meaning the judge and the courts, the Rio court ends up saying the tribunal court in Rio de Janeiro said elections must be made now. Ednaldo Rodrigues was elected back in March, and he was elected via, as they say, acclamation, by applause. You've seen it on a lot of game shows, or a lot of these talent shows where whoever gets the biggest applause ends up winning. Well, that kind of thing on acclamation. If you hear, he was basically running unopposed. So there needed to be a consensus, and the consensus is via the acclamation. Make that make sense? Well, no. It makes sense because it's what it's done. Now, it doesn't make sense from a logical standpoint. It just makes sense because everybody does it. And of course, if everybody does it, it's right? There you go. So, when it comes to what is going on with Ednaldo Rodrigues, well, like I said, he's no longer the president. Does it affect Carlo Ancelotti? No, it does not. That remains valid. That is something that was done between the CBF and Ancelotti. It was signed off by everyone in the CBF. It was signed off by Ancelotti, so that contract is still valid. Now, what ends up happening after that, I don't know. But it will cost the CBF if they end up breaking that contract. It will cost them big time. So when analyzing everything that comes out of this, Brazil are in a big... This is basically the mess that Brazil's in, and it all trickles down into everything else. Let's keep that very, very, very in mind, because this is the root cause. This is basically the biggest problem that Brazil has, and when that problem ends up extending itself, or you end up having this metastasis of issues in a federation, well, now you see where it comes from. Ednaldo Rodrigues has found himself in several situations where, well, he's already been removed once, came back, was reelected, and was able to do all these types of things. I declare null, according to the individuals signing all of these parts, based on the decision made here in the Superior Court, in reason of the mental incapacity and the possible falsification of a signature of one of the signees, Antonio Carlos Nunes da Lima, known as Coronel Nunes, as written by one of the magistrates in his official decision. That's where we end up having this issue. That's where we end up having all these problems. And that's where Brazil now find themselves not only in the midst of a huge crisis, but a huge crisis that's just gotten much, much bigger.